My hands, perpetually stained with grease and smelling faintly of oil and gasoline, were my inheritance. This garage, Vega Auto, had been my father's life, and now it was mine. He passed a few years back, too young, leaving me not just a business, but a legacy written in torque wrenches and piston rings. I was 24 and most days I felt 40. Running a repair shop wasn't about glamour. It was about precision, grit, and making tough calls. And sometimes, it was about knowing when to say no to a job that promised more headaches than profit. That morning, a car pulled in, a beautiful, beaten-up vintage Ford Mustang. Not the pristine kind you see at car shows, but one that had seen life, and a lot of it. And then, out of the driver's side, stepped Skyler. She was around my age, maybe a little older, with a confidence that made her stand out even in my grimy workshop. Her dark, wavy hair was cut in a sharp bob that framed a face with striking angles and eyes that held an intensity one found hard to look away from. She wore a tailored denim jacket over a plain black tee, and dark, worn jeans that somehow still looked sharp. There was an air about her, self-assured yet with a vulnerability that hinted at something deeper. She wasn't delicate, not in the way some people might expect. She had a strong, defined presence, a quiet strength that I instinctively recognized. "Victoria Vega?" she asked, her voice clear, a soft, almost melodious quality to it, despite the engine noises. I wiped my hands on a rag, stepping forward. "That's me. What can I do for you?" I gestured to the Mustang. "She looks like she's got a story." Skyler's gaze softened as she looked at the car. "She does. My dad's. He kept her running for decades. Said she had character." A faint smile touched her lips, tinged with a sadness that pulled at something in me. He left her to me when he passed. Her eyes met mine again, and now I saw the desperation, barely veiled. "She hasn't run in a few years. I've taken her to 3 other places. They all said the same thing: too old, too complicated, not worth the hassle. Too many custom parts, they said. Too much rust in too many critical places." I walked around the Mustang, my eyes scanning the faded paint, the subtle signs of neglect, the way the tires sagged. I mentally tallied the cost, the hours, the specialized knowledge. My father would have loved this kind of challenge, but he also had a knack for finding the impossible part in a dusty corner. Me? I was more practical. This was a money pit, a time sink. I usually avoided them. "She's a project," I said, a little curtly, trying to keep my voice neutral. "It'll be expensive. And it'll take a while. Might be easier to find another classic." Skyler shook her head, her dark eyes wide and earnest, fixing on mine. "No. It has to be this one. This isn't just a car, Victoria. It's like a piece of him. We spent so many Saturdays out in the garage, just him and me, tinkering. He taught me so much about engines with this car. I know it sounds silly, but fixing her feels like fixing a part of me, a part of us." Her voice was soft, but the conviction in it was absolute. "Please, Victoria. You're my last hope." Everyone else just laughed. Something in her raw honesty, the quiet vulnerability she let slip through, hit me. I saw my own grief, my own connection to my father's tools, his legacy. It wasn't about the money for her, not really. It was about something far more profound. And suddenly, my pragmatic calculations seemed cold, unfeeling. My father would have taken this job. He would have seen the heart, not just the rust. I let out a slow breath. "All right," I said, the word surprising even myself. "All right, I'll take a look. No promises, but I'll see what we can do." A wave of pure, unadulterated relief washed over Skyler's face, transforming her intense features into something utterly radiant. "Oh, thank you," she exclaimed, her voice lighter than before. She practically launched herself into my arms, hugging me tight for a quick moment, a pure, unthinking burst of gratitude. Then she pulled back, bouncing on the balls of her feet like a kid, her smile wide and bright. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." I couldn't help a small smile. "Hey, easy there. It's going to be a long road." An idea, a strange impulse, came to me. Look, if this car means so much to you, maybe you want to be involved? I can teach you a few things. You can help out. My father had always said you truly understood a machine when you got your hands dirty. And besides, I thought, it might keep her from hounding me for updates every hour. Skylar's eyes lit up even more. Really? You'd let me? Oh, absolutely. I'd love that. I used to help my dad a long time ago. I'd love to learn again. And just like that, the quiet, solitary rhythm of my garage was about to change. The next morning, Skyler was back, right on time. She wore a pair of sturdy work pants and a gray long-sleeve shirt, her dark hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. She looked ready, eager even, and a faint flutter of anticipation went through me. My father used to say a good mechanic could read a car's history and its rust patterns, and this Mustang was practically an autobiography. All right, I said, handing her a pair of safety glasses and a rag. First lesson, safety. And second, always keep things clean, even when they're getting dirty. I pointed to a corner of the garage. There's a workbench over there. We'll start by taking apart the carburetor. It's probably gummed up from sitting so long. Skylar's eyes widened slightly at the sight of the grimy engine bay. The air was thick with the faint, metallic scent of stale oil and age. She didn't hesitate, though, sliding under the hood with an almost natural ease, following my lead. I showed her where the carburetor was, how to identify the bolts, the careful approach needed to disconnect old hoses. At first, there was a tentative awkwardness. Her movements were hesitant, her questions frequent. Is this tight enough? Did I loosen this correctly? I answered patiently, watching her hands as they carefully navigated the intricate parts. They were slender, but surprisingly strong, her fingernails clean, a stark contrast to my own perpetually smudged ones. As the morning wore on, a comfortable rhythm settled between us. The clink of wrenches, the soft scrape of metal, the occasional grunt from me as I wrestled a stubborn bolt. Skyler, to her credit, was a quick study. She picked up on the nuances of the tools, the logic of the engine, faster than I expected. Her initial questions gave way to thoughtful observations. So, this part here, if it's blocked, that would affect the fuel mixture, right? I found myself enjoying her presence. It was unusual having someone else in my space, especially someone so keen to learn. I was used to the quiet solitude of the garage, the mechanical hum my only companion. But Skylar's focused attention, her genuine interest, was a new kind of company. I caught myself explaining things in more detail than I normally would, enjoying the way her brow furrowed in concentration, then cleared with understanding. We worked side by side, our shoulders occasionally brushing as we leaned into the engine bay. Once, as I reached for a specific wrench, my hand brushed hers. It was a fleeting contact, barely a touch, but a jolt went through me, a quiet awareness of her warmth, her proximity. I ignored it, focused on the task, but the sensation lingered, a subtle hum beneath the surface of my concentration. The Mustang, covered in years of grime and neglect, began to reveal its inner workings under our combined effort. The engine bay, once a tangled mess, slowly started to look organized, parts carefully disassembled and laid out on the workbench. I watched Skyler meticulously clean each component, her movements precise, almost delicate. There was a quiet intensity about her, a respect for the machinery that mirrored my own. I saw then that her desire to fix this car wasn't just about sentiment. It was about honoring something, a dedication I understood. The day passed, not with the usual drag of a difficult project, but with an unexpected flow, a shared purpose that felt surprisingly right. Days bled into a week, then another, a steady progression of dismantling, cleaning, and carefully cataloging parts. The old Mustang was slowly giving up its secrets, each layer of rust and grime revealing the craftsmanship beneath. Skyler was there every day, rain or shine, her commitment unwavering. Our conversations evolved naturally. Initially, they revolved around the intricacies of the engine, the delicate dance of the valves, the surprising simplicity of certain electrical systems, the frustrating resilience of decades-old corrosion. But as we worked, our hands covered in grease, our minds relaxed into a more personal rhythm. My dad always said this car had a soul, Skyler mused one afternoon, her voice soft, as she carefully polished a carburetor float bowl. The scent of solvent and metal cleaner hung in the air, oddly comforting. He'd spend hours out here. It was his escape, I think, from everything else. She paused, her eyes distant, lost in memory. He used to tell me stories about driving her cross-country, chasing the sun, before I was even a thought. I found myself sharing anecdotes about my own father, stories I rarely told. Mine was the same, I admitted, tightening a bolt on the oil pan. This garage was his sanctuary. He taught me to differentiate between a healthy engine hum and a dying groan before I knew my multiplication tables. I smiled faintly. He always said the best mechanics really listened to what a car was trying to tell them. I watched Skyler as she listened, her gaze attentive, a warmth in her eyes. There was a genuine curiosity about her, a willingness to connect on a level deeper than casual acquaintance. I realized that my initial assessment of her, as merely a client with a challenging request, was far too simplistic. She was strong, yes, but also incredibly open, her emotions simmering close to the surface, yet always controlled. I found myself drawn to that balance, the way she held herself. More than once, as we grappled with a particularly stubborn part or celebrated a small victory, our eyes would meet across the engine bay. Those moments stretched, just a fraction longer than they should have, filled with an unspoken understanding, a shared satisfaction. There was a quiet hum in the air that had nothing to do with the tools or the car. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but I felt it. A soft tension, a nascent connection that began to fill the space between us. I was a creature of habit, of routine, of predictable mechanical processes. This growing ease with Skyler, this nascent spark of something new, was uncharted territory for me. It was disquieting, in a way, yet also strangely compelling. The clang of a wrench, the distant rumble of traffic outside, the scent of oil and old steel, these were the familiar anchors of my world. Now, Skyler was becoming a part of that landscape, a new, vibrant color in my monochromatic existence, and I was starting to see the world and my garage through a subtly altered lens. The old Mustang decided to throw us a curveball, a truly frustrating one. We were deep into reinstalling the engine components when we discovered a hairline crack in the exhaust manifold, a part that was notoriously difficult to source for this specific model year. It wasn't a small fix, it was a major setback. The scent of old rust and despair filled the air. "Great," I muttered, running a hand through my short hair, leaving a smudge of grease across my temple. "Just great. This means a custom fabrication or weeks of searching for a used part that might not even fit." My usual calm was cracking under the pressure of this unforeseen obstacle. The Mustang had become more than just a job. It was a personal challenge, a promise I'd made. Skyler, however, surprised me. Instead of despair, her jaw tightened with a quiet resolve. "Okay," she said, her voice steady. "So, what's our best option? Custom fab, then? Do you know anyone who does that kind of work?" She was already pulling out her phone, ready to research. There was no complaint, no giving up, just a focused determination that mirrored my own, but without my current frustration. We ended up working late that night, sketching diagrams, making calls, trying to find a solution. The fluorescent lights of the garage hummed, casting long shadows. The air was cool, carrying the familiar scent of exhaust fumes, now mixed with the bitter aroma of strong coffee we'd brewed. I found myself admiring her tenacity, the way she refused to be defeated. She wasn't just observing, she was actively problem-solving, her mind sharp, her questions insightful. "You know, my dad used to say the best way to tackle a big problem is to break it down into 100 tiny ones," Skyler said, leaning over a diagram I'd sketched, her finger tracing a line. Her dark hair, usually so neat, had escaped its ponytail, framing her face in soft waves. The light caught the subtle curve of her cheek, highlighting the focused intensity in her eyes. I noticed the way she bit her lips slightly when she concentrated, a small, endearing habit. I found myself enjoying her presence more and more. It wasn't just the shared challenge, it was the quiet intimacy that blossomed in those late hours. The way we could sit in comfortable silence for minutes, only to burst into a flurry of ideas. The subtle glances exchanged, the unspoken understanding that passed between us when one of us hit on a promising lead. My garage, usually a place of solitary focus, felt different with her there, less empty, somehow more vibrant. I caught myself observing her more often. The strong line of her jaw when she was deep in thought, the way her brow furrowed, the precise movements of her hands as she organized notes. A subtle hint of something fresh beneath the pervasive smell of oil clung to her, becoming a familiar, comforting presence. It was unsettling, this shift in my world, this increasing awareness of her, but it was also a quiet, undeniable pleasure. I was walking into uncharted territory, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't entirely sure where the road would lead, but I felt a curious pull to follow it. After what felt like an eternity, we finally found a specialist fabricator who could create the custom exhaust manifold. It meant another delay, more cost, but a solution nonetheless. The day we got the call, the feeling of relief that washed over us was palpable. It was a shared victory, a small but significant turning point in the long, arduous journey of the Mustang. The air in the garage, usually thick with the scent of old engine, now felt lighter, almost celebratory. "See," Skyler said, a bright, relieved smile spreading across her face. "I told you we'd figure it out." She clapped me lightly on the shoulder, a friendly, spontaneous gesture that still sent a subtle ripple through me. Her eyes, usually so intense, sparkled with genuine happiness. I found myself smiling back, a rare, easy smile that felt entirely unforced. "You did," I agreed, a warmth spreading through me that had little to do with the humid garage air. There was a palpable shift in our dynamic now, a deeper comfort that transcended the initial client-mechanic relationship. We were partners in this endeavor, bound by shared effort and a common goal. I thought about my own past, my carefully constructed walls. After my father passed, I'd retreated further into the world of machinery, finding solace in its predictable logic. Emotions, particularly my own, were messy, unreliable. I'd had relationships, brief and superficial, always keeping a safe distance. This ease, this unspoken understanding with Skyler, was something new, something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. It was unsettling, the way she seemed to slip past my defenses without even trying, simply by being herself. One afternoon, while waiting for a part delivery, Skyler started talking about her dreams. "I want to open a small art gallery someday," she confessed, her voice a little softer, more vulnerable. "Something eclectic, showcasing local artists." My dad always encouraged my artistic side, even though he was a mechanic. He said you needed to create, not just fix. She painted a vivid picture with her words, and I found myself picturing her, surrounded by color and light, a stark contrast to the grease and steel of my world. "That's a beautiful dream," I said, genuinely impressed by the passion in her voice. "It sounds like him, too. Encouraging creativity." She looked at me, a direct, searching gaze that felt like she was looking right into my soul. "What about you, Victoria? What are your dreams, beyond the garage?" The question caught me off guard. Most people only saw the grease, the tools, the practical, grounded reality of my life. No one had asked me about dreams in years. I guess I haven't thought about it much," I admitted, my voice a little rougher than I intended. "This place, it's always been enough." But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't entirely true anymore. With Skylar's presence, the quiet hum of the garage felt less like solitary contentment and more like an echo of something missing. The boundaries of my world, once so defined, were subtly beginning to blur, and a tiny glimmer of hope for something more began to stir within me. The day finally arrived. The custom manifold was installed, the engine meticulously reassembled, every wire connected, every bolt torqued to spec. The air in the garage was thick with anticipation, a nervous energy humming between Skyler and me. This was it, the moment of truth for the old Mustang. I double-checked the battery terminals, then nodded at Skyler. "All right," I said, my voice steady, though my stomach did a little flip. "Go on, give it a try." Skyler slid into the driver's seat, her hands gripping the steering wheel. She took a deep breath, her eyes meeting mine through the windshield, a shared moment of tension and hope. The scent of fresh oil and old leather filled the car's interior as she turned the key. The engine coughed once, a dry, disheartening sound. My heart sank a little, but Skyler didn't falter. She tried again. This time, there was a tentative sputter, a mechanical wheeze. Then, with a sudden, glorious burst, the engine roared to life. It was a guttural, triumphant sound, shaking the very floor of the garage, filling the space with the vibrant thrum of pistons and fuel. The exhaust pipe, newly connected, puffed out a cloud of gray smoke, quickly dissipating. Skyler let out a whoop of pure, unadulterated joy, a sound so raw and free that it made me grin. Her face was flushed, her eyes wide and sparkling, reflecting the incandescent light of the garage. She looked at me, her expression a mix of disbelief and overwhelming victory. Her relief, her happiness, was a tangible thing, radiating off her. It was in that moment, in the throbbing sound of the resurrected engine, in the shared triumph, that everything shifted. Before I could even process it, before I could register the thought forming in my mind, Skyler was out of the car, practically vibrating with elation. She rushed towards me, her face alight with a fierce, almost primal happiness. In a whirlwind of spontaneous emotion, she leaned in, quickly pressing her lips against mine. It was a brief, unpracticed gesture, more an exclamation of pure triumph and relief than a deliberate act, a clumsy punctuation mark to our success. Then, as quickly as it happened, she pulled back, her eyes wide, a deep blush staining her cheeks, spreading from her neck to her hairline. My world narrowed to her startled gaze, the thrum of the engine fading into a distant hum. My mind, usually so quick to analyze, was utterly blank. A subtle, clean scent from her momentarily overshadowed the grease and oil that always clung to me. It was a moment suspended, a silent shock, the air suddenly thick with a tension that had nothing to do with mechanics and everything to do with us. The roar of the engine filled the sudden silence, then slowly settled into a steady hum. Skyler pulled back from me, her eyes wide, a blush creeping up her neck, painting her cheeks a deep crimson. My own face felt warm, a slow heat spreading through me that wasn't from the garage lights. I just stood there, utterly still, my mind reeling. The taste of victory, mixed with the unexpected, lingered. "Oh," Skyler breathed, her voice barely a whisper, her gaze darting everywhere but at me. "Oh my God, Victoria. I am so sorry. It was just pure joy. Excitement. I didn't even think. It was just an impulse." She wrung her hands, looking mortified. "I really am sorry. That was completely unprofessional." My brain finally started to catch up. Unprofessional. Yes, that's what it was. But it hadn't felt entirely unprofessional. It had felt surprising. And oddly not unpleasant. "It's fine, Skyler," I managed to say, my voice sounding a little rougher than I intended. I cleared my throat, trying to regain some semblance of my usual composure. "I get it. A big moment." We stood there for another beat, the air thick with unspoken things. The steady thrum of the Mustang's engine, now sounding almost like a nervous heartbeat, filled the space between us. It was an awkward dance, a sudden chasm opening where moments before there had been easy camaraderie. "So," Skyler said, after a moment, trying to sound normal, though her voice still held a quiver. Does she sound good? No weird noises?" I forced myself to focus on the car, on the familiar, predictable mechanics. "She sounds great," I affirmed, walking around to listen to the exhaust. "Like new. Even better, actually." It was true. The Mustang purred with a renewed vigor, a testament to our weeks of painstaking work. We tried to return to the task, discussing final adjustments, but the easy rhythm we developed was gone. Every glance felt charged, every casual brush of hands when reaching for a tool felt amplified. Skyler's usually open demeanor was now tinged with a nervous energy, a slight hesitation in her movements. I caught her stealing glances at me when she thought I wasn't looking, her expression a mix of embarrassment and something else I couldn't quite decipher. My own thoughts were a jumbled mess. I kept replaying the moment, the soft, quick press of her lips. It wasn't about the act itself, which was so fleeting, but the raw emotion behind it and the unexpected way it had affected me. It wasn't just joy for me. There was an undeniable pull, a curiosity that had been sparked. I found myself subtly observing her, too, noticing the way her eyes crinkled when she truly smiled, the slight tilt of her head when she was listening intently. The air around us felt charged, filled with an unspoken question, an evolving understanding that transcended a mere impulsive gesture. The final adjustments took a few more days, each one imbued with a new layer of tension and awareness. The car was almost ready, and with its completion loomed the imminent departure of Skyler from my daily life. It was a bittersweet feeling, the satisfaction of a job well done mixed with a quiet ache of anticipation. Our interactions had settled into a new pattern, an unspoken understanding hanging between us. The nervous energy from the immediate aftermath of that moment had matured into something deeper, more resonant. We still talked about the car, about torque and timing and obscure engine parts, but beneath the surface, there was a palpable current, an emotional undercurrent that pulled us closer even when we tried to maintain a professional distance. I found myself gravitating towards her, whether it was to hand her a tool she didn't even know she needed, or just to share a glance across the workbench. Our eyes would meet, and in those moments, words felt superfluous. There was a mutual recognition of something significant, something that had quietly bloomed between us amidst the grease and steel. One afternoon, as we were cleaning up, wiping down tools and sweeping the floor, the setting sun casting long, golden shadows across the garage, a comfortable silence settled between us. The air still carried the scent of oil and gasoline, but now it felt less industrial, more like a familiar home. Skyler was carefully hanging wrenches on the pegboard, her back to me. "You know," I said, my voice softer than usual, surprising myself with the words. That moment by the car. Skyler froze, her hand still on a wrench. She slowly turned, her dark eyes finding mine, a hesitant question in their depths. The blush was back, a delicate flush across her cheeks. "It wasn't just joy for me, Skyler," I continued, stepping a little closer, my own heart thrumming. "It was something else. Something I haven't felt in a long time." My gaze was fixed on hers, searching, vulnerable. A slow smile began to form on Skyler's lips, a tentative, hopeful curve. "Me too, Victoria," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the fluorescent lights. "Me too." And then, drawn by an undeniable, magnetic pull, we moved towards each other. This time, there was no surprise, no impulsive rush. It was slow, deliberate, a mutual acknowledgement. My hands, still bearing the faint scent of oil, gently reached for her arms. Her hands, surprisingly soft, found their way to my shoulders. We leaned in, a hesitant, clumsy meeting of lips, softer, more inquiring than before. It was a quiet, unpracticed contact, a tender confirmation of the unspoken feelings that had grown between us. It wasn't about grand gestures or fervent declarations. It was a profound, quiet understanding, a burgeoning emotional resonance that promised something deep and lasting. In that moment, surrounded by the mechanical world that had brought us together, a new kind of passion, one built on shared purpose and genuine affection, began to quietly ignite. The next day, the Mustang was finished, shining under the garage lights, its engine humming with renewed life. Skyler arrived, a different kind of anticipation in her eyes this time. A subtle hint of perfume from her mingled with the familiar garage smells, creating a unique atmosphere. "She's perfect," Skyler breathed, circling the car, her hand brushing lightly over the fender. Her voice was laced with an emotion that wasn't just about the car. She looked at me, a soft, knowing smile on her lips. "You really are a miracle worker, Victoria." I shrugged, a small smile playing on my own lips. "We did it together." The formalities of payment were quickly handled, feeling almost irrelevant now. There was a quiet understanding between us, a shared secret that had solidified into something real. As she prepared to leave, a wave of bittersweetness washed over me. This project, this car, had been a vessel for so much more than just repairs. "So," Skyler said, her hand on the car door, her gaze lingering on me. "I guess this is it then. For the Mustang, anyway." "Yeah," I replied, the word feeling a little empty. The garage would feel too quiet without her, too much like it used to be. My world, once so structured and predictable, had been subtly rearranged. Skyler, with her quiet strength and vibrant spirit, had carved out a space in it I hadn't even known was empty. She had shown me a different kind of drive, one that wasn't about horsepower but heart. My father would have liked her. He would have seen the good in her, just as he saw the potential in every broken engine. She had helped heal something in me, a part one hadn't realized was wounded after he left, opening me up to connection, to vulnerability, in a way I hadn't been in years. "It doesn't have to be it for us, though," I found myself saying, the words coming out almost before I registered them, a quiet certainty in my voice. My gaze held hers, a silent question passing between us, a promise. Skylar's smile widened, a soft, hopeful curve. "No," she agreed, her voice gentle, full of warmth. "No, it doesn't." She paused, then gave me one last, lingering look, a spark in her eyes that told me everything I needed to know. "I'll be in touch, Victoria." "For sure." And then, she was gone, the roar of the Mustang's engine echoing in the driveway, a sound that once signified a job done, but now, to me, it sounded like the beginning of something new, a journey just starting. The garage felt different after Skyler left. The echoes of her laughter, the memory of her focused brow and capable hands, lingered in the air. The space, once merely a workplace, now held a warmth, a softness that hadn't been there before. It was still my sanctuary of steel and grease, but now it felt a little less solitary, a little more alive. I found myself looking at the tools, at the engine blocks, at the entire world of mechanics, through a subtly altered lens. They were still fascinating, still challenging, but they no longer consumed my entire focus. There was a new horizon, a burgeoning possibility that had Skylar's face and her gentle strength at its center. The old Mustang, now purring contentedly out in the world, had been more than just a repair job. It had been a catalyst, an unexpected vehicle for a connection that had gently, yet profoundly, reshaped my understanding of myself and what I was capable of. I was no longer just the pragmatic mechanic, walled off by grief and routine. Skyler had shown me that opening up, even a little, wasn't a weakness, but a profound strength. She had brought a glimmer of hope into my quiet world, proving that beauty and connection could be found in the most unexpected places, even amidst the grime of a garage. The engine of her heart and mine had been meticulously restored, tuned, and now it was ready to run. The road ahead was unwritten, but for the first time in a long time, I was ready to drive it. I was ready for whatever came next, a quiet optimism humming within me, as strong and true as a perfectly tuned engine.